Why are fast food prices so much higher?
Imagine paying twice as much for a Big Mac as you did 10 years ago.
The Connecticut Highway Service Plaza, where a Big Mac combo is $17.
Now imagine finding out that the franchisee who sold it to you didn't get richer. The worker who handed it to you definitely didn't get richer. And even the corporation everyone loves to blame is quietly telling Wall Street that its own franchise owners are struggling to keep up. So if the price doubled and somehow almost nobody in the building got richer off of it, where did the money actually go? Because the answer isn't as simple as corporate greed. It's something stranger, an entire industry where the money increasingly flows to people who never once stepped inside a restaurant. Today, we're doing the math on who actually got paid when fast food got expensive, and who just thinks they did. Start with the assumption almost everyone makes. Prices went up, so the people who own the restaurants must be getting rich. It's a reasonable guess. McDonald's menu prices are up roughly 100% since 2014, more than double the pace of general inflation. Wendy's, Chipotle, and Taco Bell have all raised prices between 50% and 80% over roughly the same period. The customer is paying dramatically more, so the instinct is to follow that money to the person standing behind the counter with their name on the lease. Surely the franchise owner is having their best decade ever. They're not, and the reason why tells us how this industry actually works. Start with the worker. Despite decades of rising menu prices, the inflation-adjusted purchasing power of a minimum wage worker is still dramatically below where it was in 1968.
So what do you think about this? Increasing hourly wages for fast food workers, what kind of an impact has that had on your business?
Well, someone's going to pay for it. Prices are going to go up.
So whatever happened to that extra money, it didn't primarily go to the person making your burger. Cross the worker off the list. But the franchisee? Surely they're the ones getting rich. Not so fast. Getting into a McDonald's franchise can require roughly $1.4 to $2.7 million, with at least 40% required as liquid, unfinanced cash. And after all that, you don't simply get to keep the revenue your restaurant generates. Take an average location doing around $4 million in annual sales. Roughly 30% goes to food and packaging. Another 28 to 30% goes to labor. Rent, royalties, and marketing fees can take another 14 to 18%. Then you've still got utilities, insurance, equipment, and everything else required to actually keep the restaurant running. What remains for the person who put up millions of dollars and personally guaranteed the business? Roughly $300,000 to $500,000 a year. That's a real income. But it's not the windfall you'd expect from seeing menu prices double, because here's the important part. When sales rise because prices rise, rent and royalties rise with them. The franchisee isn't simply keeping the extra money, and franchisees themselves aren't exactly celebrating.
An overwhelming 87% support calling a vote of no confidence on CEO Chris Kempczinski and U.S. President Joe Erlinger.
In January 2026, McDonald's independent franchisees published a 15-point Bill of Rights, demanding more control over things like menu pricing. That's not how people talk when they're swimming in easy money. So the worker didn't get rich, the franchisee didn't get rich, which leaves one obvious suspect: the corporation. And this time, there really is evidence. McDonald's earns enormous amounts from its franchise system, including rent, royalties, and other fees. It owns roughly 70% of its buildings and 45% of the land under them. And in 2025 alone, McDonald's spent close to $2 billion on stock buybacks, money returned to shareholders rather than reinvested into wages or lower prices. So yes, corporate is winning. But here's the problem. McDonald's isn't actually the end of the ownership chain anymore. Private equity has spent the last decade buying major restaurant chains. Rourke Capital alone has a portfolio that includes brands such as Subway, Arby's, Sonic, and Jimmy John's. Blackstone acquired a majority stake in Jersey Mike's in a deal reportedly worth around $8 billion. These firms don't run restaurants. They don't design the menus. They don't manage the crews. They own the cash flow. And that's what makes the franchise model so powerful for investors. The restaurant generates predictable revenue. The franchisee carries much of the operational burden. Corporate collects rent, royalties, and fees. And then, increasingly, the ownership of those businesses sits with investment firms whose entire job is to turn that predictable cash flow into returns. So go back to our franchisee. $2 million of personal cash, an unpaid shift proving themselves, a personal guarantee, years of running the restaurant, maybe $300,000 to $500,000 a year in income. Now compare that with putting the same $2 million into McDonald's stock 20 years ago and doing absolutely nothing else. McDonald's has delivered a total return of roughly 700% over that period. That $2 million becomes roughly $15 million. No restaurant, no employees, no toilets to clean, no lease, no equipment, no personal guarantee, just ownership. The franchisee took on the operational risk. The passive shareholder took on almost none of it, and the passive shareholder came out multiple times ahead. Now line them up. The workers' real purchasing power fell. The franchisee's share of the bigger pie stayed roughly flat, while many of their costs scaled with sales. Corporate captured a meaningful portion through rent, royalties, fees, and shareholder distributions. And increasingly, the ownership of that corporate cash flow sits with investment firms and shareholders who never operated a single restaurant. So when you ask, where did the extra money go when my Big Mac doubled in price? The answer isn't simply, the guy who owns the McDonald's got rich. The money moved up the ownership chain. From the customer, to the restaurant, to the franchise system, to the corporation, and ultimately to the people who own the assets and the cash flow. Imagine paying twice as much for a Big Mac as you did 10 years ago. Now imagine the franchisee who sold it to you working an 80-hour week to make $400,000 on a $2 million bet, while somewhere in a spreadsheet at an investment fund, someone who never set foot in that restaurant is earning a return simply because they own a piece of it. The price went up, the money went somewhere, it just didn't go where you'd assume. And increasingly in this industry, the people who make the food aren't the people who make the most money from it. So here's a question worth sitting with. If you had $2 million right now, would you put it into opening a restaurant or into owning one? Let me know what you'd actually do down in the comments. I read every single one, and honestly, on a channel this new, they help more than you'd think. And if you want to keep following the money on stuff like this, who actually profits when prices go up? Who's quietly footing the bill? That's the whole channel. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.